Welcome to CEDAR Podcast. Common European Data Spaces and Robust AI for Transparent Public Governance.
Welcome everybody to this third episode of the CEDAR Podcast series. Today we wanted to give a bit of a turn to the key themes of this series of conversation. I'm still very happily surrounded by three of our esteemed partners today of the CEDAR project. But we would like this time to focus a bit more on a subject that it's at the core of the project indeed. So we are going today to better explore the current situation in Europe, especially within the European research area and in each of the 27 member states of the European Union of women's involvement and representation in STEM disciplines. So for the very few ones that are unaware, I'm sure there are very few ones that are unaware with a STEM concept. The STEM stands for science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. So to kickstart the discussion, I've pulled out a very short excerpt with a key finding from the latest edition of the She Figures Out report. It's one of the most authoritative publication in this field. It is released every year by the European Commission. So and it says as it follows. So while women outnumber men in university education, they remain strikingly underrepresented in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics careers and leadership. The report reveals a widening gender gap in critical sectors like ICT, where only 22% of doctoral graduates are women. This not only deepens the European existing skills shortage, but also threatens long-term competitiveness. So of course, the report is very long and it's very exhaustive. And by the way, we will provide you with a downloadable link in the episode annexes of this episode. But before tossing on the table any facts and figures or statistics, I would like to dive deep in the matter with our three daily guests. Ultimately to have a first-hand voice from different perspective and also to get a real understanding of the situation, both from their field of expertise and their personal experience as well. So I'm cutting a bit to the chase now. Let me first and foremost introduce our three guest speakers for today. That's needless to say to point out that they are all partners in the CEDAR project. So we have the pleasure to have to host today Adelaide Baron-Kelly. She is a senior researcher at Turin University and the Brandenburg Institute for Society and Security. Jelena Saralic, NLP engineer at the Trebe Technologies, and Tjasa Ivanovic. She's a senior policy inspector at the General Policy Directorate of Slovenia at the IT and Comms department. So, guys, thanks a lot for joining us here today. I would like to hand you the floor now for a short introduction of yourself, but also to give us a bit of anticipation of your experience in the research field, also including the CEDAR project, as you like. So I'd like to start maybe with you, Adelaide. Thanks for being here today.
Thank you, Francesco, and hello to everyone. As Francesco told you, I'm a senior researcher at the University of Torino and the Brandenburg Institute for Security and Society. I'm an economist and I work in the general field of the economics of security. My research is mainly on the arms trade, as well as in corruption and criminality, and in the general field economic of institutions. In CEDAR, I work on the economics behind the data. I mean, we are collecting a lot of data. The technology to collect data has improved over the years, but there is always need of someone that is able to interpret this result from an economic perspective. So our mine and big works in CEDAR is to interpret economically the data we are collecting, at least part of the data we are collecting, to say from another perspective, to give an economic interpretation, economic framework on the massive amount of data that have been collected in CEDAR and will, at the end of the project, will be collected. Thanks.
Thank you, Adelaide, for your very clear-sighted introduction for setting the frame of your role in CEDAR. I'll move on now to Yelena. Thanks, Yelena, and good morning. Thanks for being here today as well.
Thank you, Francesco, for the lovely introduction, and hi, everyone. So my name is Yelena, and I am an NLP engineer in Treve, and in CEDAR we are one of the technical partners, meaning that we research and develop one of the tools that will be used for some downstream purpose later on. I consider myself originally a linguist that later turned to engineering, and in Treve what I do mostly is research focused on AI or machine learning.
Thanks, Yelena. That's nice to see all the different facets of the professionals behind the CEDAR project. And now I'd like to conclude giving the floor to Tiasha for your introduction as well. Good morning, Tiasha. Thanks for being here today.
Thank you so much for this. I'm really pleased being here with you to represent women in actually the police department and IT. I never thought I would be called for that one. I start my career, or actually my studying path is in anthropology. I went to finance and I'm currently pursuing PhD in corruption. So we have in corruption and AI approaches to transparency and oversight. So we have a lot in common, which is probably understandable as we are all in the same project. I'm currently involved in Tree Horizon project, where our team is developing different implications within our Stalita platform. But what I want to stress here, that everything we try to develop here, it's oversight of public procurement. We try to develop, and it must be guided by the ethical principle, with strong focus of fairness, equality, and fundamental rights. And I believe this concept perfectly connects with the idea behind today's podcast, as we are here to promote fairness and equal opportunities, including gender equality, actually to make everyone have the same chances to succeed. So I'm really happy to be part of it. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Tiasha. And that's a very valid point that you raised, the ethical, legal, and fundamental rights dimension, because to some extent, to a strict extent, I think they are very closely related to the gender equality dimension as well. So let's dive together into the nitty-gritty of this episode. So gender equality in research and innovation. We said at the beginning, pulling out the little excerpt from the She Figures Out report. The gender equality in research and innovation is not progressing fast enough, according to this report, and not only from this source. I cited at the very beginning the little fraction, the not satisfactory fraction of doctoral graduates, women doctoral graduates in ICT, but it's just one of the meaningful figures of this report. But I would like to open the conversation with the three of you on which are, according to your experience, the most significant barriers women still face in research careers, particularly in leadership and STEM fields? Maybe Yelena would like to give a start to this point.
So I think one of the biggest issues is kind of starts at a very young age, sort of, because I think still a lot of focus is being put on like what should a certain gender do, and what is like a basic feature of a gender. And I think it's like it's not so rare to praise girls for being good in mathematics or being and thinking analytically and so on. And I think this kind of it's very implicit in society, in many societies, not in all of them, of course. But I think this is where the issue kind of starts. And you can see here, I think both me and Tiasha are now working in IT. We all kind of entered in IT via like some other research fields, me linguistics and her anthropology from what I've heard. So this is also interesting because, okay, we might have ended up in IT and STEM fields, but we entered in a roundabout way. We did not start from a young age, which might be due to interest. I'm not saying this is necessarily causation of any sort, but I think it's an interesting point. So I think it starts at a very young age, first of all. Second of all, I think, well, STEM and research in its own way are quite like fast-pacing and cutthroat. And this is also one thing that I think women are not very, like, they're not as encouraged as men to be very strict and cutthroat and to just go for what they want. And so I think it's kind of a mixture of all of these things.
Yeah, that's very insightful from you, Elena. So the stretching back of the matter, like a generational issue that we are trying to progressively move away. So maybe I'd like to hear more from Adelaide as well, and then Tiasha.
Yes, Francesco, I absolutely agree with Yelena. There is these problems start at a very early age. Women are more likely to enroll at university. The number of women that enroll at university is higher than men, but they choose humanities, they choose a subject, they choose a literature, history, they don't choose scientific subjects. So probably they are not encouraged to do so. I remember a friend of mine who is the perfect engineer, but she wasn't allowed by her father to do engineering because she was a woman. And in the end, she ended up to have a master degree in quantitative finance, so pretty scientific, but not engineer because she wasn't allowed to do so. So there is still this kind of bias that does not allow women to enter, to choose scientific subjects. Moreover, there is also a problem of the kind of work that women do, even in academia as well as in workplace. There is a lot of research that shows that women are more likely to do collective tasks. They are more cooperative and they tend to do something that is for the collectivity and not for their self-interest. So if you analyze the kind of task that women do, this kind of task block their career because they are less self-service. And also there is also the issue of family. Family is still a big problem. I can talk for academia, which is my workplace, but usually women are in charge of the children, the parents. So even if something is changing on this aspect, I think that there is much to do. For example, now in many workplace, but not in all workplace, father are must take the parental leave after having a child because it's getting compulsory because if they are not obliged to do so, they usually choose not to take the parental leave because it's considered negative for a father to take the parental leave, but taking the parental leave is a great help for the mother. So you see, this can change, but still there are a lot of cultural obstacles to removing this barrier for a woman career.
Yeah, you're absolutely right in pointing this out, Adelaide. Even if we are moving away and progressing, of course, as you said, in different cultures and it's not even cultures, but let's say in, the member states are progressing differently. Of course, we have to take into account all these let's say heredited inheritance from the past, let's say. But we will get later maybe to the brighter side of the situation, talking a bit more even of the more successful cases and what's going a bit better. But let's close this round with Tiasha point of view as well.
Hi, thank you so much for this and this opening from Yelena and Adelaide. I mean, I cannot agree more. Maybe I will just try to put it in my own wording. So upbringing and as well what we see is normally what we do. So I checked the data a bit and I was quite surprised as I'm honestly really lucky in my environment as I feel totally equal. So I was quite surprised when checking the data. And women are doing really well. In Slovenia, actually more than 50% of PhD graduates are women, as mentioned, of course, from colleague. They are mostly in social science, but we are actually above the average. But when we talk, so I'm talking about Slovenia, when we talk about engineering and leadership, the numbers suddenly drop, and we are only about 1 from 5 women in this area. And even fewer, which I found for my point of view, even worse, are in decision-making roles. For me, as I'm anthropologist from my first education, every problem starts with culture and our perception. We often say the opportunities are equal, but in reality, biases and stereotypes will shape who gets encouraged to go into technical or leadership paths and who won't. And the major issue from my point of view is lack of visible role models. When we don't see women leading, we quietly start believing that we can't. And what I think it's even worse, because here I will put the twist, that maybe even we believe that other women can't. Anthropology actually explained this quite well. Our idea of what is normal or possible comes from what we see around us, which was already explained from both of our participants, and which role we repeat each day. And here I would like to maybe take something to consider. At least in Slovenia, in schools, most teachers are women. However, a lot of principals are men. And somebody needs to vote for them. We often say that we live in men's world. And that's why we don't get chances. But even in women's worlds, I think that sometimes we don't give those chances to each other. So my question here is always, how can we accept equality from others if we don't even start believing in ourselves? I think only with a role model, with women taking a lead, we can open the door for other women to go through. Thanks.
Yes, thanks to you, Tiasha. That's a very another illuminating perspective you're putting on the table. This role model following. It's really explanatory, and then it's a kind of I can't agree more with you all, and with this last example as well. This kind of domino effect, no? As long as you don't see women in a let's say in a higher position, you get a conviction that they can't access those positions. So the role model, I think, is really something truly meaningful. But let's get now into a more actionable discussion and try to discuss. Let's try to discuss a bit more what can be put into action to start improving the overall situation in Europe. Of course, I'm not going to spell out in here and tackle all the numerous initiatives that the European Commission is undertaking in this very moment and in this very year. So, and just mentioning for the sake of it's important, the gender equality strategy 2025 to make a significant progress towards a gender equal Europe. But how do you think, I mean, would it be possible to strengthen women participation in STEM and research and academia within the European Union, and what could the Commission could do more or maybe better to boost this process and to uptake the women's role in research? Maybe this time, Tiasha, you can move on with your with your discourse before moving to Yelena and Adelaide.
Thank you so much. Our perception needs to change. That's it. Everything starts with a culture from the top, which I'm pretty lucky that I have it. And for me, everything is possible because I can see it. I believe in it, and even my boss supported it. It just, if you believe, you can see yourself there. But even I don't know what I just mentioned. What was Yelena? Yes, I'd apologize. Whose upbringing, or what was Adelaide said, the father. This need to be shifted in society. We can do it different ways. We can do it even with start, I don't know, with the children, different books. I don't think how life would be different if in the books will be when the woman opened the door, but the man is cooking. I mean, I'm going too far with that one, but just to see the picture. And maybe talk less and act more. Mentoring, supporting, recognizing talent, flexible career path, and early encouragement. Everything which will give women opportunity to see that this is actually their choice. At least in Slovenia, in IT sector, we lack people. You will get a job, to be honest. And this is now even in research, because we lack people who have STEM sciences. But you will not get probably the leadership role. So for my just change in the perspective. Thanks.
Yeah, I understand. Yes, even maybe a more formal recognition that could be something that helps to get more women and young women to undertake this and start this career. Adelaide?
Yeah, I agree that culture is definitely the key point in changing the perspective and changing the situation. Without a change in people's mentality, we cannot fully reach equal opportunity for all. However, there is a problem with culture, that culture is very slow to change. I mean, is changing, it has changed. Well, my grandmother wasn't allowed to go to university. My mother went to university, but she was allowed only to do Italian literature, because as a woman, her only possible job was to be a teacher. And I did not choose a STEM because actually I have a degree in political science, but perhaps the next generation will choose a STEM subject. So culture takes time to change. However, I truly believe that policy some policy change can really help the change to get fast. Well, for example, I already mentioned parental leave, so I'm a strong supporter of that policy, but also, and I think that it should be compulsory in every work environment. If you have a child, you are allowed to have parental leave for 10 days, 15 days, even a month, full stop. But also, I think that I'm also a strong supporter of choosing woman in relevant decision making place. For example, let me quote a paper from the Nobel laureate David Card and also Patricia Funk and other co-authors, where they show that in at least in the academic American academic field, now women are more likely to be selected as member of scientific society. Why? Because now women are in scientific society. So if you have women in decision place, in place where they can make a relevant decision, in the end, it's more likely that they will choose other women. And there is a lot of research showing that similarities is a key factor when you have to select a candidate. So I think that it's very, very important to encourage women to help women to get to relevant places, to the higher places where they can choose, they can really change the policy, they can really make changes toward equality and equal opportunity for all.
Yeah, you're definitely very right, Adelaide. I think as well that having more women sitting in a higher position and having a more decision makers impulse and role could guide and help to let's say to speed up the whole process. That's for sure. This is something that it's also partially happening within the current commission scheme with a lot of women's commissioner and officers. But yes, there is space for improvement. That's undeniable. And just to conclude with Yelena as well, with your input on this.
Yeah, so I agree with my colleagues. Actually, something Tiasha said about the man cooking and the woman opening the door reminded me of this thing that I saw recently. I think it was Denmark, but it was definitely Northern Europe somewhere. Like a novel concept for a kindergarten where I believe kids aged maybe 3 years old were separated into boys only and girls only groups. And the girls did activities that were traditionally or like societally associated more with boys and vice versa. So like girls went out and threw rocks and jumped in puddles of mud, whereas boys kind of worked more on their nurturing side. So the idea of the kindergarten is to like increase the neglected side of someone's personality societally. So like what society tells you to do, you do the opposite in kindergarten, and then you kind of can reach an equilibrium. So I thought this was a very interesting concept. But I also agree with what my colleague said about how to resolve the issue and what action actually to be taken. I think oftentimes when people talk about discrimination, one of the solutions that is very often like a very basic one and like a popular one is to introduce some sort of quota. For example, in universities, okay, now 50% of the spots are reserved for women, another 50 for men. I think this is just a band to the issue. I think this doesn't actually resolve. Like positive discrimination is not the solution, in my opinion. I think it only furthers the issue. So I think an action point could be continuing what my colleague said to improve visibility in a way. As Tiasha said, what you don't see, you don't do, and what you see, you do. So I think it will be very important to take people that are already in these positions, so like women in positions of power, women that are working in STEM and so on, and just make them more visible. Introduce young girls to this concept. Look, there are women CEOs, there are women in STEM, there are very successful women engineers. And also just visibility maybe retroactively as well, because now with like continuing research and so on, it's been uncovered that a lot of women in history were also just ignored. And their contributions were written off to men, which in case it was not so. So I think just increasing visibility today and also in the past already is the best way to kind of encourage young girls to continue in this path.
Yes, that's very truthful. The visibility aspect is important to keep sparking this process forward. So, by the way, I would like now, while moving, let's say, slowly to to conclusion, I would like to move over now to a more to bright sides, let's say, to more positive notes. I would also like to take a step back in the field of our profession, is research and innovation European project. Things are slightly improving to some extent. I mean, the European Union lately in the last years has made quite good strides in promoting gender equality in research and innovation. For example, including and introducing a gender equality plan eligibility criterion for Horizon Europe, and as a result, in many of the projects we are used to cope with on a daily basis. I'm reading aloud here some statistics from the Commission website. 81% of calls for research and innovation proposals now address the gender dimension, and women now make up more than 51% of participants in Horizon Europe boards and expert groups. There are quite promising steps forward, if I might say. But I would like to ask you if you have in mind or if you have personally experienced some research areas where women's right now, not in the future, but right now, women's representation has already achieved a satisfactory degree so far. So maybe Elena, you can continue, move on with your speech.
Yeah, sure. So actually, I think that I read a few years ago, I don't know if this is still the case, but I read that within computer science, my specific field, which is natural language processing, actually is very balanced, and there is more women in the field than men, which I thought was very, very cool. Other than this, I'm not sure because also, I mean, it's definitely getting better, but it's still a big gap. I read actually a statistic that, well, I don't know what this is based on, but a statistic that EU has closed 75% of its gender gap. However, like AI fields are still drastically different with like a huge disparity between men and women. So other than my field, which was a few years ago, I'm not sure where in like machine learning or AI. Right now, the situation is very good.
Yes, sure. I understand. It was more curiosity, either for me and for our listeners as well, to know your actual, not just the overall, let's say, statistic figures, but your personal experience. Maybe what about Adelaide? Maybe has another point of view on this or experience.
Let me start with the bright side. Um, all the universities where I worked have now a general president. In Italy is a rettore, who is a woman. So that's quite a change. I mean, when I enrolled myself at university, there were a few women in key pivotal position, but now we have all the university where I've been a student or a researcher have now a woman as the big boss. So that's the happy side, I think, and I'm very proud to say that. In academia, the number of women that have position as a researcher, but also as professor, is increasing. But we are still, unfortunately, we are still lagging behind. So also the pay is slightly lower for women than for men, because women are not the great majority of women are not in senior positions. So there is still a gap to change, but overall, I think that things are changing. So it will take time, and but in the end, I think that at least in economics, the gender gap will be neutralized, but it will take time. And unfortunately, if we look at scientific subject, the gap is higher. So much work to do, I think.
Yes, and I completely agree with you, Adelaide. It's very good you brought up the salary gap dimension as well. That I think it would take an entire episode on its own, but it's need to be fully addressed by the overall European Union member states. I believe, but it's nice anyway to see this improvement on from your perspective as well. Let's try to conclude with this. Maybe with Tiasha, you have another experience to head up on this.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I must agree. We can see that we are all women working in this area. I believe we are both all saying the same, maybe just using different wording. What I must agree with the number, because this changed our perspective. However, with all this research outnumbering women, I would like to borrow this word, which I was surprised it was so nicely put it, the collective work. With a lot of European projects and other projects, there is a lot of collective work as well. So I would like to see actually what this number of women do in the research. This would be some option. And I'm really happy to hear that from my colleague perspective, that women are become the big bosses. I think that's a major importance, because it doesn't matter. I will get the job in IT, but if I'm not in decision role, I cannot take opportunity or bring something on the table when the decision will be which project to take, what to develop. And I think women here are also a lot of time concerning and are part of the ethics, social and culture. And major important is not just that take research roles but that we take senior position, leadership position, that we can make the change. In regards to different wages, I find it so amazingly funny, because in Slovenia, women are outnumbered men with education. In all social science, maybe you will find some, but mostly in law, in humanitarians. However, what I found amazing, the most women are judges, which have lower wage, and the most of men has lawyers. somehow it is always this different, even with the same education. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Tiasha. It is actually now time to wrap up this episode. I mean, the time did fly today as well, but I really hope that this engaging conversation has been helpful for you all, and I really love to have concluded the episode with this illuminating final statement on your side, or kind of an indication on how to move forward. It has been particularly nicer to conclude with the bright side of the whole subject of this theme on gender equality in research and innovation in Europe. And I really hope that we will left you with some good food for thoughts. I'm sure of it. It's now time to say goodbye. Rest assured that the new episodes of our series will follow over the next year and after the Christmas break as well, with plenty of news, since we are now entering full speed in the very last year of CEDAR, and maybe we would be able to bring up the gender equality and women involvement in STEM theme in the next episode as well, with Adelaide, Tiasha, Yelena, and maybe other colleagues from CEDAR will join us as well. In this regard, I do invite you to keep up and follow our social media to stay alert on new episodes released, but also with many other novelties, events, attendance, workshop papers, which are in our pipeline. So, well, cutting to the end, I'd like to thank you again, my three splendid guests for today. It was truly a pleasure to have you here, Adelaide, Tiasha, and Yelena. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you, Francesco. Thank you for having us.
Thank you
Yes,
so
thank
much.
you.
Thank you again, guys. Thanks to our listener for listening, of course, and see you all next time. Thank you.
CEDAR Podcast.